Dear all, in this video I will explain what is important for the agricultural policies, the stability of prices or the stability of income of farmers. This question actually arises in connection with price stabilization, and in most of the time, particularly developing or less developed countries, more focus on stability of prices in the market rather than providing stability of income. My reference book is written by Thomsen and Footh in 1952. The title of the book, Agricultural Prices. This is a great book in order to get deep knowledge about the agricultural prices in developing countries. The two are not the same by any means. For example, let us assume that in 1 year a large crop by a farmer is produced, followed by a small crop the next year. Assuming no difference in demand for the commodity in 2 years, the large crop will sell for a relatively low price and the small crop for a relatively high price. The difference in prices tends to offset the effects of farmers' income of the difference in production. But if through some form of control distribution, the price stabilizes at the average level in both years, the farmer's income will be relatively high in the first year and low in the second year. In other words, stabilization of price results in unstabilizing farmers' income from commodity. Since security is farming probably depends more upon stability of income than stability in prices. The so-called stabilization operations really would contribute to insecurity rather than to the economic stability of producers. Now let us consider the same questions from the standpoint of stabilization of prices during a single marketing year or season. Using hogs as an example, the natural corn and hog production makes it easier and cheaper to produce hogs for marketing in winter and early summer months than for marketing in the late summer, fall and spring months. As a result of uneven seasonal distribution of hog marketing, hog prices usually relatively low in the winter and early summer months and high in the fall and spring. The possibilities of increasing total returns from sale of a given quantity of agricultural commodity by regulating its flow to market so as to stabilize prices over the time is governed by a well-established principle which is illustrated in this figure. In this chart, which is based on hypothetical data, the bottom and or horizontal scale represent the quantity marketed. The vertical scale represents the total value or returns from the sale of different quantities of the product. Curves X and Z and the straight line Y are total return curves. Sometimes they are called value supply curves. The curves shown in figure indicate an elastic demand. But in connection with principle relating to its effects of stabilization operations, we are concerned not with the slope of the returns curve, but with its shape. Now let us assume that in 1 year a large crop of commodity is produced, represented by 20 on the horizontal scale. which it intersects at the point labeled L. In the following year, a small crop is produced of 8 units intersecting the bottom scale at point labeled J. Now we can determine what the total returns from the two crops would be under any of the demand situation represented by total returns curve X, Y, and Z. This is done by erecting vertical lines from the points L and J to the appropriate total return curve and then drawing horizontal lines from these points to the vertical scale. The scale shows the total value or returns from the sale of the respective quantities L and J. For simplicity, the scale is in terms of unit of value, which might be thousands or millions of dollars. Thus, using curve X, the large crop L of 20 units would sell for a total return 17.3 point D on the vertical scale. The small crop J would have a total value of 27.2 point A on the vertical scale. Refers to this. The combined value of two crops L and J is 44.5, which comes from 17.3 plus 27.2. Stabilization by storing the surplus of one period of time for sale in a subsequent period of time when production is similar involves a change in the quantities marketed in each of the two periods and hence the gross incomes received in each of the periods. This means, in the case of annual stabilization, that instead of selling one large and one small annual crop and quantity equal to a medium-sized crop would be sold in each year. In other words, marketings in each segment of the total time period covered by the stabilization operations would be the same. By using figure, we can see what the total return would be from selling two medium-sized crops compared with selling a large crop in 1 year and a small crop in the next year. The total quantity sold in the 2 years combined will be the same with or without stabilization, which merely changes the time at which this quantity is marketed. Referring again to figure, we find that the average of the large crop L and the small crop J is the medium-sized crop K. With total returns curve X in effect, the medium-sized crop K will sell for 23 point B on the vertical scale, referring this. The combined returns from two such crops sold in successive years would be 23 multiplied by 2. This is greater than the combined returns from the sale of one large crop L and one small crop J, which we previously calculated to be 44.5. In other words, with total returns curve X in effect, total returns are increased by stabilization. It can be demonstrated mathematically that this will always be true if the total returns curve is curved concave downward like curve X in figure. Some refer to such curvature as convex. With total returns curves of different shape, the result would be quite different if the curve is concave upward like curve Z in figure. The total returns from the sale of two unequal quantities will always be greater than the combined returns from two equal quantities totaling the same amount. In that case, of course, stabilization of quantities marketed over the time and hence stabilization of prices will result in lower total returns for the entire period than would be marketing of uneven quantities. Using returns curve, that it will be found that a large crop L would bring a return of 3.2 point L on the vertical scale, a total of 15.2. If the same total quantity were marketed as equal amounts in each of the 2 years, point K on the bottom scale, the returns in each year would be 6.8 point H in vertical scale, or a total of 13.6, which is less than the combined values of large and small crops sold separately. If the total returns curve is a straight line curve y in figure, the returns from the sale of any two quantities, large and small crops, will be equal to the returns from two medium-sized quantities representing the same total amount. This is evident by comparing the sum of the values G10 and C22 with twice the value of E16, resulting from the sale, respectively, of quantities L, J, and K. In this case, therefore, and all others where the returns curve is a straight line, stabilization of prices would neither increase nor decrease total gross returns for the period as a whole.